think many of you have been through the eco-efficiency agendas, which is really a demand-side management in effect, and it's like a Six Sigma in the sense that you're improving constantly around the minimization and avoidance and the reduction of cost and damage, say, to the environment. And that's been a very useful thing. Obviously, it's better than being purely bad to be less bad. But one of the problems is, as we came out of the Earth Summit, all the businesses got up and said, we're going to be more eco-efficient and reduce our reliance on fossil fuels, we'll reduce our damage to water supplies and so on and so forth. But really, that's kind of an analytical, but not necessarily creative exercise to the extent that it provides new ways of doing things. It's really around optimizing the things we were doing. So I think there was a misinterpretation of being less bad as being good. And from a perspective of a designer, being more good is more interesting, because to be less bad means we're analytical and we take what we've got and then we deal with it. Being a creative and effective person means you see what opportunities are there and you move positively into them and become a synthetic person. So if we're doing the wrong thing and then we efficiently do it, we might be doing the wrong thing efficiently. And that might be worse, because if I'm a terrorist and I'm doing it efficiently, it's worse. So efficiency is not a value. It has no value. It's like a tool, it's like a hammer, has no value. It's a signal of intention that gives it its value. So we see we need a new design, and design is the signal of intention. So if I just do what I was doing, and I do it less badly, my intention clearly is to keep doing what I was doing. And if that's producing damage, and I'm doing it efficiently, what is this intention? We haven't changed our plan. So that's what I'd like to talk about today. So less is a relationship between numbers, let's say, and bad is a human value. So this isn't math. You don't get to multiply them by each other. You know, a double negative becomes a positive. No, it's you're bad as a human value, and you're just being less so. So how do we move on to being more good? Well, the first thing we do is we change our mindset from being, oh, the world is running out of everything and it's destroying itself, or we're destroying it. And if we say that's not our plan, it's really, we all got here, you know, flying airplanes and driving cars. And so it really appears to be part of our de facto plan. Because even if we do it less badly, we're still doing the same thing. So our de facto plan appears to be tragic. So we'll just destroy the world more slowly. But if we were going to restore the world, what would that look like as a plan? And I'm a designer, so that's my question. What if we celebrated abundance instead of limits? What if we celebrated the abundance of sunshine instead of the limits of fossil fuels? What if we celebrated the abundance of clean water and good chemistry instead of toxification of rivers at textile mills, which we've been able to show is totally unnecessary? We've been able to do textile mills where the water coming out is cleaner than the water going in Switzerland. And that's up. So why can't textile mills be water purifiers? So we just move through it that way. That would allow us to have a long-term goal, which might be very aspirational, but we can make short-term decisions based on that long-term goal. Well, our long-term goal is to not bemoan the population, because we're going to have it. It's the way it is. Get over it. So instead of saying, oh, we have to have population reduction, we have a population problem, that's interesting, but the problem is, like being less than, that means you might look at a child being born in India or China or the US or somewhere and say, oh, you're a population problem. Now, for a child being born, we should celebrate them with open arms and love and a hope for creativity and say, welcome to the world. It's a place where you get to enjoy your creativity and celebrate your life and take advantage of things for everyone's benefit and give us your great gifts. That's really what we need to tell all the children. So we look at all the children as an opportunity for love. And then if somebody wants to have a population control or something like that, well, that's a separate discussion. And just by the way, what we found or observed is that the times that the populations are reduced are simply, on a goodwill basis, is when women are treated equally to men. All of a sudden, you see populations decline. So if you wanted to talk about that, go talk about that, but not from a resource perspective. It's not okay to say some kid doesn't serve because we're running out of stuff and we're greedy. No. So by design, we ask the question, how do we become native to place? And what does it mean? It means we're not leaving. Native peoples aren't leaving. They know they're going to stay around for 5,000 years and tell each other their stories. So we are now all indigenous people to the planet. We're not leaving. So once you realize we're not leaving this place, that's a change of consciousness. So why wouldn't we design so that we can celebrate being in this place for many generations? Now, I've had the privilege of living in a house designed by Thomas Jefferson, and, Thomas Jefferson wrote a Declaration of Independence for 6% of the U.S. population at the time, Protestant males, landowners. But still, it was a Declaration of Independence calling for freedom from remote tyranny. In our case, it was George III, but today we want freedom from the remote tyranny of ourselves and our generation and the generations that just preceded us, who tyrannized our atmosphere and tyrannized our water. And now we're stuck with these problems. And if we continue as they did, then we will tyrannize our next generation. So I'd rather send our next generation a signal of interdependence, which is the independence of the remote tyranny of us for future generations. And it's intriguing to know that we are Thomas Jefferson's seventh generation. And what would we be leaving as a legacy for ours? So we now have science, and we can start to do things that weren't able to be done for centuries. And we also you see those two swirls of blue in the North Pacific off California? Those are the Pacific gyres. They contain 46 times as much plastic as plankton. Is that our plan? The oceans have absorbed 43% of the anthropogenic carbon dioxide since 1850. They're now at 8.06 pH, having come down from 8.2. We expect by end of century these oceans will be at 7.9 pH with our carbon releases scheduled. And at 7.9, we dissolve coral reefs. The oceans are calcium, are carbonic acid. And we dissolve mollusks and shells. So we drop out the bottom of the food chain. So while everybody's thinking, oh, isn't it horrible, the climate change, carbon in the atmosphere, which is really a problem, because, see, we don't have an energy problem. There's plenty of carbon-based fuel all over the planet. We have a materials problem. We have carbon where it doesn't belong, in the atmosphere, in the oceans, etc. We have a materials problem. Carbon in the wrong place. Carbon belongs in soil. So these gyres, 46 times as much plastic. All right. Now, if this is our situation, maybe we have to go back to first principles. And if anybody's interested, they can, I guess, in the question period ask me, but one of the things that I did as a college student was worry about this stuff. And I took a physics course because I wanted to know, having grown up in Japan, why Hiroshima disappeared and why Einstein was afraid. So I was asked by my physics professor to solve he said, oh, you want to know the special theory of relativity, so go solve the equation. So I did. And it's a fun story. And if you've all done the obvious, which is solve this equation, you'll know what I'm talking about. But if you haven't, I'd be happy to show you. It's one of those curiosities of life that a lot of people don't, when I ask for hands, don't seem to have actually worked this thing out. And I'm not a scientist, I'm a designer. So, but anyway, I look at it as a design assignment. And so here's what's going on. The sun is our form of energy. It's nuclear power. If you want me to go backwards, I can connect all this, but it's nuclear power. It's a thermonuclear reactor. And it's physics. And it's exactly where we need it, where it was designed to be, and we were designed to integrate with it at 93 million miles distant. So, hallelujah. Now, we have about, anywhere from 5,000 to 10,000 times more sun striking the Earth's surface than And so we will solve the energy problem because we have current solar income, and it's robust enough to run our systems. In fact, that's what it's been doing a very long time. So we have income. It's the only form of income on the planet is radiation from the sun. So remember that, anybody worrying about economics, this is our income. Now, it strikes the Earth's surface, which is math, chemistry. So E equals physics, M equals chemistry. And we have inorganic chemistry in the water. We put the two together in the solar flux, and we get the thing that Einstein didn't talk about, which you call the mystery, which is life itself. Now, we don't have chemical income. We don't have chromium falling from the sky. We don't have, other than occasional meteorites. So that's it. We don't have material income. So if we take all the materials on the planet and distribute them and either burn them or bury them or otherwise cause entropy of a material or energy nature, then we can't recover. So if we take the chromium from South Africa, put it in our shoes to make them black, bury the shoes, burn the shoes, next thing you know, we've talked about the environment and we've lost the chromium. So that's our present protocol. So instead, what we're looking at is what would it mean to design things based on this diagram if this was the living diagram. And you'll see very quickly that the sun strikes their surface, gets chemistry moving, aggregates in a kind of negatively entropic way into trees and soil, and then those over the millennia and millions of years become the oil in the ground. And so it's all solar income. We just have a capital reserve in the form of fossil fuels, hydrocarbons, created by the things on the surface, carbohydrates. So we are now burning our ancient stored solar income, our capital. And we are destroying the forests and so on that perform the aggregation of that income into healthy things that aggregate carbon in soil. Fascinating. So we're going exactly in the wrong direction, according to the design of the planet. So what I'm looking at here today is what if we could take the thing that nature brought us, which was this design, sun plus minerals plus living things, equals life itself. And as Crick pointed out 9 years after discovering DNA, in order to be a living thing, he determined you had to have growth. That's good news for business. And because your cells have to regenerate, you lose, every, I think it's 3 hours, your cells are all cycling. So you need growth. You need free energy from sunlight. That's where the income comes from. You can't grow without income. And but this is a key one that hasn't been looked at by many people until Dr. Browner and I sort of articulated it specifically in regard to industrial production. We need an open metabolism of chemicals operating for the benefit of organisms and their reproduction. That's what Crick identifies, the third key ingredient of a living thing. So we decided, wouldn't it be great if we could study life and use it as a mentor and model from thousands of years? And there's plenty of people doing this because it's so obvious, and we've done it for millennia because people who lived in the natural world were part of the natural world. So this isn't new, it's just a reflection on operating systems that we might want to optimize. So, when I look at this picture, I see these yellow lines. This is called gravity. Not just a good idea, it's the law. So, what other laws are here? Well, one of the ones, and the ones that Michael Browner and I are articulating in cradle thinking, it isn't just closure cycle, which a lot of people say cradle, oh, I get it. You turn things in circles, and you do closed loop production, things like that. No, that's not worth it. We're talking about something else, and it's really that, but it's not limited to that. It's that if there's a biological metabolism, that's Crick identifying science as the basis of life, and we see that closed cycle of things becoming things again, and nothing is waste. And so one of the things we say is waste equals food. We eliminate the concept of waste. But we also realize that in 5,000 years, humans, since they started banging metal, make other things from them that are not biological. We call them the technical nutrients. And so if everything's a nutrient of something else, it would be great if we could take the technical world, computers, the chairs you're sitting on, the cars you drive, and turn them into nutrients for new manufacturing. Now, it's not about just close the loop, because we're not saying take a chair and send it out to the market and then 10 years later go back to Mexico City and pick it all up and take it back to Michigan and reform it. No, that's not what we're talking about nutrients. In other words, that chair in Mexico should be able to come apart into steel to steel, aluminum to aluminum, polyester to polyester. So we create material pools that are constantly in cycle. So we're not saying take it back necessarily. Now, a carpet we might, because we're delivering a carpet to truck, and we're perfectly poised to take back a carpet. And it's appropriate. So you might have a take-back program, which we originally proposed in the 80s, for the carpet industry, which we've actually done in America. We're very proud of that. But that doesn't mean everything gets taken back, because it's really, these are materials and pools, and they're part of metabolisms. So we design products with our clients, whose aggregate revenue is now in excess of $1.2 trillion. And we design materials that go back safely to soil, like a fabric made of wool. And we do all the chemistry around it. So the fabric is so clean you can eat it, and the water coming out of the mill is drinking water. These are biological nutrients because you're going to sit on them, you're going to breathe them when they break, you're going to do whatever you have to do to enjoy them, but they will be in your lungs at some point because of the way they're used. So we talk about use cycles. We don't talk about end of life, because these materials, many of them, like a technical nutrient or something, or a computer, it's not alive. Why are we doing end of life? And if you look at full life cycle assessments, they typically talk about what happens to something from cradle to grave. They'll talk about, at end of life, that computer goes into whatever, landfill, et cetera, gets crushed, it becomes something, or a car gets crushed with all of its minerals, like copper and molybdenum and antimony and so on, and turns into a big piece of metal mush. We call that recycling. And we lose the copper, we lose the bismuth, we into the steel, and we weaken it. So it's really a down cycle, we call it. So we're talking about recycling or upcycling. We actually look at materials and say, how do they come back and get better, things like that. So it's not just about a life cycle assessment, who's got the least bad one, the paper bag versus plastic bag debate, which is better. And the conclusion was, by the plastics industry, it's plastic, because in the end it ends up in a landfill and it takes up less space. That was their conclusion, because it's cradle to grave. So how's it doing the grave? Less space. Paper industry said, oh no, paper bags are better because we don't involve fossil fuels. So we just pull the rivers, chlorine, and you can't compare them, etc. And it's natural, and it can biodegrade. But in a landfill, it won't for 1,000 years. So, what are we talking about? We need new design. And so Cradle to Cradle looks at that problem and would say, well, why do you need a bag? We're using a bag. Or what if we deliver this stuff? Or using renewably powered systems? And you just get on to the creative side. So it turns into a lot. So being less bad is not being good. But at the same time, efficiency is fine. A lot of people think we're against efficiency. We're not at all. We just want to make sure that people establish a really 100% goal of goodness in their business. And then from there, we track our optimization. So efficiency means we reduce our badness, we save on the demand side. Absolutely, we should do that. In the case of energy, save energy. It's very cheap. It's probably the cheapest way to reduce costs and save money. But on the other hand, you won't get where you need to go, because where you really want to go requires invention and creativity. Because if you reduce your badness and you reduce your coal to the minimum, nuclear to the minimum, you're still nuclear and coal. So if you wanted to be 100% renewably powered, you would have to have a different strategy. On top of reduce your demand, you would want to enjoy your supply. And that's leadership. So the companies we work with here in the furniture industry, which is my business, for example, the architecture interiors where I started. I started with my companies that I work with every day, and I said, listen, can't we redesign these things to be like this? And of course, and so we have Steelcase, Hayworth, and Kermit Miller. These are all Cradle to Cradle certified chairs, and they all use renewable power for their making. They're designed for disassembly. The Think chair from Steelcase, for example, comes apart in 5 minutes with tools you'd find in the kitchen drawer. And in the reduction of parts and complexity of attachments, this chair became 20% more effective to produce and reduced its cost by 20%. So it's all also a huge business. We say, let's use 100% renewable energy. We're not saying reduce your carbon. We're saying we're going to use renewable energy, and that's what we do. And we have tools for our clients. We've taken the Cradle to Cradle protocol, we've given it to the public as a benefit. The Cradle to Cradle certification program is now in the hands of a not-for-profit based in San Francisco called the Cradle to Cradle Products Innovation Institute. It was instigated by Governor Schwarzenegger, who asked us to bring our intellectual property into the public because we had been able to work with huge companies doing the most extreme environmentally sensitive work, and we had never used a regulation, we had never used a government grant, and we had never used foundation money, never used tax dollars, etc. He said, I'm a Republican. Why wouldn't I like that, right? We've never used a regulation, a tax dollar, or a foundation. Isn't that incredible? And yet we've been able to do business, helping business do good business. Isn't that something? And Michael and I really do believe that commerce will be the engine of change that transforms us from being an incredibly sort of, quote, wasteful society and turn us into a very restorative, generative society. People in this picture, other than Governor Schwarzenegger, are Martin Fisher, who behind him with the engineering at Stanford, Wendy Schmidt in the red dress is the wife of Eric Schmidt, the CEO of Google, and to the right is Chad Hurley, the founder of YouTube. So we've got a really incredible support system. More on that if you have a question. Now, I'm an architect, so we need mnemonics, we need guidance. So my compass is, what if I could design a building like a tree, sort of negatively entropic? Instead of burning a log and creating all sorts of particulates and heat, everything dissipates, never to be reassembled, chaos, which sounds like our society. What we're looking at is, wouldn't it be great if I could do a building that accrued solar? Like the log that is burning, that's negative entropy in my mind. So I want to design buildings that make oxygen, sequester carbon, fix nitrogen, distill water, provide habitat for hundreds of species, accrue solar energy as fuel, make food, change colors of the seasons, and self-replicate. So what if I could do that? So here's some examples. Here's a biological nutrient building in Louisville, Kentucky, in a forest made from the forest, solar-powered and regenerative and clean water. It's made of carbohydrate silicon. So it can go back to the forest 1,000 years from now if we want to, because it's of the forest and it's safe materials. This is a technical nutrient building for Oberlin College, a building that makes 113% of the energy required and purifies its own water. And we were given the River Rouge to do by Bill Ford, take this on, 20-year plan, $2 billion budget. And the joke in Dearborn is obviously this is a color photo. So we cleaned up the soil using plants instead of chemistry. We use biology. It's been very effective. We share our data with the world through the University, Michigan State University. And we put the world's largest green roof on the lava floor. Now, why did we do that? It was very easy for me to sell this to their board. I just went in, I had a minute and a half, and I said, this building's for the birds, and that's true. But what you need to know, your fiduciaries in the auto company, I'm going to speak to you in dollars and cars. So the cost of your system, already engineered for water purification to meet the Clean Water Act, is $48 million. It's posted on your books. The cost of our system, $13. So we would like you to save $35 million in CapEx using nature instead of machines and chemicals, and allow workers standing around praying. So it's equivalent of a savings of $35 million, day one CapEx. And this, when translated to cars, would be with the Ford Taurus at a 4% margin out of Chicago. This is the equivalent of an order for $900 million for the cars. Do you want it or not? So there it is. Here's the roof. On the lower left, you see killdeer eggs, one of the first species to land and nest. We're going native, so to speak, right? So that the animals are returning, because we're providing them with something more good instead of less bad. If we had been less bad, we would have been trying to figure out how to shrink the pipes, or use one chemical treatment plant instead of two, etc., to perfect the wrong thing, right? And if you perfect the wrong thing, you are perfectly wrong. So what we're looking at is, what is the right thing to do, and then we'll do it efficiently. So we love efficiency after you're effective. And this means we start with values instead of metrics. So if you start with metrics, like you're just measuring your badness, or what your carbon release is, for example, you can move to tactics like change a light bulb, strategies like change all your light bulbs, and get the goals like 20% reduction in 2020. But what if I said, no, I really don't like to spread mercury? I have other ideas. What if we could move toward technical nutrient lighting and preserve the Indian gallery, turn things into what we call products of service, so we get them all back, and they're safe for ecological human health, not just in toxic time loss. So what we do is quality first. So we start with values. We start with good, not bad. We start with more as a metric, not less. So we start with positive, and we go from values to principles to goals and strategies and tactics, and then we measure. Oh, we saved you $35 million. Doing the right thing. Isn't that interesting? You couldn't get there from metrics. If you start with metrics, you just reduce your badness. You'd never invent the world's largest green roof. So when we apply this to cities I'm working on in China, this was a card that I sent as a gift to the Premier of China after he announced that China's urbanization would cause a 20% reduction of farmland in China by 2020. And I sent him a note saying, why do we lose one when we have to bring in the other? Why can't they coexist? What if our cities were like Paris, farms? So I'm working in China. And it's not that crazy. Someone sent me this picture. After he saw my drawing, he went out and did it. This is right. This is the right for his family, for you. So we do buildings like this one for NASA. They're sustainability based, which we imagine a space station on Earth. What would it look like? And this will be the most instrumented building in America. But it produces all the energy it needs, plus another 20%. Cools itself from the Earth, uses natural ventilation when it's appropriate, et cetera, et cetera. It has so many characteristics you can't imagine. It's just too hard to even score. It's like beyond any scoring system that humans have devised for building stuff from. And we put the stuff we don't want in red and the stuff we do want in green. So instead of having somebody do these charts where they reduce their badness and say, I got 20% goal carbon by 2020, carbon reduction, we say, no, you are now below the line. This is how many megawatt hours a year you require of fossil fuels. The base case, and that's a LEED platinum of this dimension. The NASA building we designed is the next red thing, and then you see the roof with the photovoltaics, and there we are. You put it in the parking lot, we're done. The building paid back its energy mortgage. So we want more buildings like this. They're like trees. They give us benefit. We look at water consumption, base case, LEED platinum building. Look at how much we use. The sewer, 0. When we went to the scientists and said, you pee and you poop in the water, what are you going to do about it? And they all said, we know how to do this. We do it in space every day. Fine, you're in charge. Watch what happens. Now, is this pie in the sky? Of course not. This is real. This is the way the Earth functions, and we're now part of it instead of fighting it or destroying it. So this is a map that we developed, that NREL, the National Renewable Energy Lab, developed, and we used it at Vantage Point Venture Partners, where I'm a venture partner. There's $1 billion fund for clean tech. And we're studying very closely the rollout of solar, obviously, like so many people. This is a map of what's cost-effective, grid parity, same price as buying it from the utility today. There it is. Those red spots, you can absorb solar energy better than the grid, or equally. And here's what it looks like in 5 years, with a 25% annual rate cut, which is traditional the last 10 years. That's what it's been. And if it turns out it's even more of a rate hike, which is quite possible, it will look like this. So basically, a half of the country is going to be grid parity within 5 years. So these investments are real. And then finally, I'll just show you this building I'm working at in Barcelona because I just love it so much. It's a laboratory building for Air Pharmaceutical Group. You see that 15-story atrium and then the 2 wings, which are sort of triangular? This building's floor plan are tiles laid out in the wings of the ancient butterflies of Catalonia and Barcelona. These are the tile patterns on which the laboratories were laid. And it's a celebration of the ancient species of this place. But all the tiles are non-toxic and can return to clay. And the ones that we couldn't use, colors like green and blue and red, were toxic. So the tile company is now working with us to perfect those tiles too, so they can be safe and healthy. Then we can use them to make the great butterfly. And this is a working drawing of the floor plan. It's tile by number. And the yellow line is just the squiggle showing where the holes are. So you'll have these beautiful patterns you won't quite understand. But the thing I love is that the idea is that on Saturdays, children can come to the bottom of the doors and open them, and the butterflies will be being hatched themselves in the atrium. They're chrysalis to butterflies 7 days. So at the end of a week, this thing will release thousands of butterflies back in the bodies. And the signal will send to Barcelona, let's fix our landscapes to welcome the butterflies back. Get away from all artificial watered plants to things that the butterflies are living. So let's talk about total quality improvement. But instead of improving our efficiency protocols and doing the wrong thing better and better, what if we articulate a positive goal? And then while we reduce our badness, let's increase our goodness. So we have strategies for our companies that we work with, and we basically say, reduce your negative footprint, of course. But don't just do that. Don't just report your footprint essay. Talk about what you plan to do. Tell us where you're going. So that's what we do with our clients. We do the science of leadership and goal setting. And then we take these trajectories. We show that to the next generation, our intention as a species, since we are dominant on the planet, is for it to be a safe, abiding, creative, abundant place, not a less bad place while we drive ourselves to desperation and war. And the question becomes not just, can I have a building with a 10% reduction in carbon footprint, which is what we do now and applaud all the time. No. How do we love all the children of all species from them? Why can't I design a building that restores the ancient butterflies? Isn't that? Why? Am I doing it for money? I'm doing it for the pure pleasure and beauty of it. So instead of spending lots of money on fake plants or watering in my atrium and saying there's my budget for landscape, I just say the zoo will give us these chrysalis because they're hatching anyway, and we're going to hatch them with the scientists. We'll just celebrate our atrium and butterfly. And we'll just love that and see what it does to the city. So we have a positive goal, not a less negative one. Here it is. Our goal is a delightfully diverse, safe, healthy, and just world with clean air, water, soil, and power, economically, equitably, ecologically, and elegantly enjoyable.